In a village in Ethiopia, a young man named Enzu wished to marry the beautiful daughter of Lord Sky and Lady Sun, so Enzu wrote a letter asking for permission to marry their daughter. But how could he?
Enzu sent the letter to Lord Sky, who lived in a house in the heaven. Enzu went into the forest where he saw a deer.
Mombi,
He said.
will you take my letter to Lord Sky?
The deer just looked at him and replied.
I would like to help you, but no matter how high I leap, I cannot leap as high as the sky.
Enzu waited until he saw a hawk.
Mikumbi,
He said.
will you take my letter to Lord Sky?
Don't be silly.
Replied the hawk.
No one can fly that high.
Soon, Enzu saw a halakoko bird.
Hala,
He said.
surely you will take my letter to Lord Sky.
The halakoko bird replied.
I can fly higher than all the other birds, but even so, I cannot fly as high as the house of Lord Sky.
Enzu went home frustrated. We sat down to think how he might send his letter to Lord Sky. He thought until his head ached. Suddenly, he felt something jumping up and down his big toe. He looked down.
Young master,
Said Grasshopper.
give me your letter. I will take it to Lord Sky.
Go away, Grasshopper. I have asked Mombi, Mikumbi, and Hala. The deer can leap and the birds fly, yet they cannot reach the sky. How then can you, a little green hopping creature, do what they cannot do?
Give me the letter, and you will see.
All right,
Said Enzu.
but if you fail, I shall crush you.
Grasshopper knew that Lord Sky and his family drank water from a certain well in the village. Each morning, Grasshopper saw Lord Sky's servant girl climb down a cobweb ladder to the well with an empty jug on her shoulder. She would lower the jug into the well, fill it with water, pull it up, and carry it back to Lord Sky's house. Holding the letter in his small mouth, Grasshopper jumped into the well. He balanced himself on one of the rocks. As soon as the servant girl lowered the jug, Grasshopper hopped into it and was carried to Lord Sky's house. The servant girl placed the jug by the door of Lord Sky's room. Grasshopper hopped out of the jug and placed the letter on a table. Then, he hid in a corner and waited. In a while, Lord Sky came. He saw the letter and read it. He called the servant girl.
Did you bring this letter from Enzu?
He asked.
Master, I did not bring that letter. I do not even know Enzu.
The next morning, Grasshopper hopped into the empty water jug and was carried back to the well where Enzu was waiting.
Well,
Said Enzu.
do you bring and answer?
Young master,
Replied Grasshopper.
Lord Sky read your letter, but he gave no answer.
I do not believe you went to Lord Sky's house. I knew it. You're just making a fool out of me.
Enzu shouted, raising his foot to crush the grasshopper.
Do not kill me.
Begged the grasshopper.
Please give me another chance. Write another letter, and this time I will surely get an answer when Lord Sky reads it.
Enzu glared at the grasshopper.
I don't know if I can trust you again.
He said angrily. He thought for a few minutes while Grasshopper hopped up and down nervously. At last, Enzu said,
All right, I'll give you one more chance.
he really did not know who else could help him.
Thank you, master.
Said Grasshopper. Just as before, Grasshopper went to Lord Sky's house, put the second letter on the table, and hid in a corner. Lord Sky was more puzzled than before when he saw the second letter. He wrinkled his forehead and tugged at his ear. He looked around the room and under the table and outside the window. Grasshopper held his breath and kept out of sight. Finally, Lord Sky said.
I still wonder who brought this letter.
Again, the servant girl replied.
Master, I did not bring that letter. Truly, I do not know that Enzu.
The servant girl already looked very worried. Lord Sky shook his head.
This man, Enzu, must have magical powers.
He said.
How else could his letters have gotten here? He must be an important man.
Lord Sky leaned against the table.
Bring me a pen and paper. I will answer his letter.
Lord Sky wrote.
To you who sends letters asking for my permission to marry my daughter, I will agree. You seem to be a persistent young man. But first, you must send me a sack full of gold to prove you can take care of my daughter.
Enzu read it and said.
What will I do now? How will I get enough gold to fill a sack?
Do not worry.
Said Grasshopper.
I will help you. Go home and get a shovel. Then I will take you to a secret place deep in the forest where you will find enough gold to fill a sack. Also, bring food. You will need strength. for it will take much walking and hard work.
Enzu wanted to give up already. He could not believe how a small grasshopper could help him.
This is unbelievable. How could Grasshopper know where to get the gold?
He asked himself, but since he really wanted to marry the princess, Enzu did what Grasshopper told him. 3 days and 3 nights they walked into the deep forest. 3 more days and 3 more nights Enzu shoveled and shoveled and shoveled until he struck something hard, a large, round clay pot.
What is this?
Asked Enzu, tired and disappointed.
You bring me here just to let me unearth an old clay pot? How could you do this to me?
There is no time for explanations, Master. We should hurry so we can give the sack of gold to Lord Sky.
Then Grasshopper took the sack full of gold to Lord Sky's house. Because of his excitement, Enzu never bothered to ask how Grasshopper would bring the sack of gold to the house in the heavens. What Enzu did not know was that Grasshopper had a magic Okukalulu box. Grasshopper put the sack on the table and hid in a corner. Lord Sky's eyes glowed when he saw the sack of gold. He sat down and wrote another letter at once.
Enzu, by your magical powers and gift of gold, you have proven that you love him and can take care of my daughter. You may marry her in my house in the sky.
He placed the letter on the table and left.
Grasshopper,
Enzu said after reading the letter.
you have done what anybody else cannot do, and I thank you for that. But all is in vain. How can I get there in the sky? I am too big to hide in a water jug and too heavy to climb the cobweb ladder.
Don't worry.
Said Grasshopper.
I will think of a way so that you can marry the princess.
The next morning, Grasshopper took his magic Kukululu box with him to Lord Sky's house. He hopped out of the jug and hid under the princess' bed, where he stayed until the princess was fast asleep. Then, without waking her, he took her voice and put it in his magic Kukululu box. Someone was coming, so Grasshopper hid again under the bed. He heard Lord Sky say,
Lady Sun, what is the matter with the princess? She opens her mouth, but no sound comes out. What shall we do?
Grasshopper returned to Earth the next morning. He gave Enzu the Kukululu box containing the voice of the princess.
Young master, write another letter to Lord Sky. Tell him you have the magic to restore his daughter's voice if he sends the princess to you on Earth.
After Lord Sky had read Enzu's letter, he said,
Put on your bridal dress, daughter, and go to Enzu. He has the magic to make you well. He will be a good husband.
And so it was Grasshopper who helped Enzu's wish come true. On the eve of the wedding, Enzu thanked Grasshopper. But instead of answering, the Grasshopper turned into a young man. He was smiling at Enzu.
I should thank you, Master. I was cursed by an old medicine man when he saw me taking tea. Clay pot full of gold. I was so extravagant and did not care about others. He turned me into a grasshopper. I could only return to my old self when someone trusts me and if I do good to somebody.
So, Enzu and the princess lived a happy life.